Hi there, and welcome to this remastered episode of Warhammer Inquires. Tired of lore channels being long-winded? Just need some quick dirty lore on something that caught your interest? New to the 40,000 or 30,000 space? Need a reminder or simplification? Then I am the man you need. Captions are available and are typed out by hand, as well as 2K resolution, optimized for headphones and full-screen viewing. That extra length over, what do we have on this remastered episode? Why, the plasma gun, of course, following after the melta gun remaster. The brother to the melta gun, but if you are familiar with the plasma gun, you'll be confused by my wording here. How can the plasma gun be the brother to the melta gun? Well, here's why. The plasma gun works by heating hydrogen into, you guessed it, plasma. Then, within the weapon itself, an electromagnetic accelerator is used to then eject or fire the generated plasma and destroy whatever target is in the user's way. Sounds different, but it also uses a magnetic containment field, MCF, to which the melta also uses that to some extent, which is why I call them brothers. MCF can stand for Magnetic Containment Field, as well as Magnetic Confinement Fusion. GW thought they could be slick by changing one word, but not today. But GW may have been smart here, at least in some fashion. I would like to draw your attention, not to the magnetic field, but rather the containment. That's our key to understanding the plasma gun and what makes it different, deadly, and often detrimental. And thankfully, it is simple. How? The melta gun is a generator, whereas the plasma gun is a battery. It's clicking into place, isn't it? No? Alright. The melta gun does not retain the energy it generates. Instead, each pull of the trigger causes a reaction, a chain reaction, if you would, which leads to the damaging armor-melting blast, precise or otherwise. The plasma gun has an inherent charge. It retains energy, like a battery, and uses said energy to heat the hydrogen from its ammunition flask, which then transforms into plasma. Then after said plasma is generated, it is then shot out via its magnetic accelerator, to which the unfortunate target will see the wrath of the sun before being melted and subsequently exploding. The ammunition flask is at the back of the stock and bottom of the weapon. Its front, when firing that is, expends the excess heat generated. But its user must be careful not to overwhelm this backup system. That's right, the frontal vents are backup systems, and the user is given the task of not overwhelming the inbuilt cooling systems. Unfortunately, this means it's stuck between a rock and a hard place, at least for its user. Do you risk overwhelming the weapon for better performance, or potentially explode? The plasma conundrum is quite the thing. This leads me into my next point. The plasma gun can overcharge to stand up to heavier targets, or to just have an easier time vaporizing an insect. But here is something interesting. A point of contention, even. Not really. You see, there has been a misquote proliferated throughout the Imperium side of the fan base for the plasma gun. In specific, the heavy plasma gun, otherwise known as the plasma cannon, has two power settings: a high power, the Overcharge, and low power, standard firing setting. Now this has been spun about to mean that all the plasma weapons for the Imperium side, mind you, have these power settings on them, when in fact it is specific to the plasma cannon from what I can tell. But Solaris, I hear you ask. What about the Overcharge you mentioned only a few moments ago? Doesn't that support some kind of power setting to a degree? That is a valid point. However, you might be focusing too much on my wording there. Overcharge and assuming that it is standard for all plasma guns. This is something I do not advise. Assumptions, as the saying goes, is the mother of all mess-ups. But. Those of you who may be familiar with the plasma gun might be ready to point out that, in tabletop, novels, and even video games, the Overcharge is present as, I've defined it, a game mechanic. Here is where I encourage you to subscribe to the game mechanic rather than a statement. This is a rare case of a gameplay feature in the tabletop and video games existing for so long, and dare I say being quite iconic, that it just becomes part of the setting by proxy. Though even then, from what I have read and seen, the act of overcharging a plasma gun is often a last resort in most instances, instead of a you can do it when you want type of setting. Though there are exceptions, of course. But in some instances, I do remember certain patterns having it as an intended feature, but I couldn't remember them as of time writing this script. So guess on this one, I'm going to suck an egg. Lastly, a plasma gun has an effective magazine of 10 shots. Yes, 10 shots. It's that low. It can be increased via a backpack source, however, it is unclear how many additional shots you gain from said backpack source. So, the plasma gun is the brother to the melta gun, its overcharge is more related to tabletop and video games. What else is there to say? Another point of contention, in a way. In specific, a certain pattern of plasma gun, or rather, patterns. You see, pattern is a funny word in Warhammer. Sometimes it denotes a specific type of weapon which looks different, sometimes mark and its associated number means it functionally works different from the previous mark. It's a 50-50 coin toss. In our case, the toss is in our court, and that is the Mark 12 Rage Fire pattern, and the M35 Magnacore Mark II. The Rage Fire because it contradicts the plasma's ammunition count, because the plasma gun has an effective ammunition count of 10, to repeat myself. The sources I could cite would far outnumber both video game depictions, but I'll be conservative here. Though I may not like it, you still can. Agree, disagree, or argue in its favor. They're both wonderful tools. Use them wisely. And another thing, because the M35 Magnacore Mark II from Darktide, my dearly beloved, has given some people the idea that you can reload the plasma gun as a regular person. It's not, and you can't. The fuel being handled and fed into the weapon is volatile, as is the process it goes through to create the plasma. Also, I'm ignoring Space Marine 2. I haven't played it, can't play it because I have no space and cash, so I can't reference it. That's my rule. If I can't play it, read it, or find it myself, I'm not going to reference it. If you would like, please support me on Ko-Fi, follow me on Tumblr or blusky, here are some screenshots of the accounts, and if we reach a full chapter strength, I'll consider a Discord server. That's 1,000 subscribers, by the way. Also, comment, Action Plasma, when you get to this portion of the video. Shows me that you've watched this far. Like and subscribe too, the usual. Back on topic, you do not foul the hydrogen unless you want to implode or are desperate. For once, the Adeptus Mechanicus are right to be lobotomy happy because of another reason. Plasma weapons, despite being uncommon, as seen being wielded by multiple people, named characters, etc., are often semi-relics, in effect, as it is passed down through successive generations, be it for Space Marines or regular people. Now, this doesn't mean it can't be produced, hence the semi-affix, but constructing these weapons are a tedious and arduous task due to, you guessed it, the knowledge being somewhat lost. So try not to make it implode, unless you're an Iron Hand in the Death Watch. Sometimes, it's about the message. But we aren't done yet. That's right, we have some bonus content for you. The Tau, often denoted by their blue skin, bovine hooves, and of course the giant mechs often referenced in conjunction with anime. Yes, get the joke out of the way. I think the Tau deserve better treatment by the community, but sadly they made the mistake of being naive and altruistic to some extent, and thus have been endlessly derided because of it. That's when they made the mistake of being wholly different from the standard. Which is sad because, despite my own dislike of the Japanese aesthetic, I believe the Tau put a fun spin on things, with multiple Asian cultures influencing them. Though that video is long in the future, we are here to talk pulse weaponry. Pulse weapons are unique to the Tau Empire. They are plasma guns, however they function completely different to Imperial plasma weapons. The difference? Pulsed induction fields. Some more fancy sci-fi jargon, joy. The closest reference I could find to even attempt explaining this to you is post-inductive thrusters, but something doesn't click there for me, so I can't really, in confidence, say anything besides that it works different, and potentially behaves better, I guess? Well, 3rd edition comes to my aid, and it seems to be the consistent running depiction for every Tau Codex that I could reference. Though I could have sworn I saw a different depiction take place in a novel or short story, maybe an audiobook, but I don't like quoting audiobooks. The Tau also have the plasma rifle, which is indeed safer, but as a result, less powerful. Though it still is plasma, so add an asterisk to that damage potential. Aside from that, that's all you really need to know. But, before you go, we do have variants and strange cases. The Plasma Blaster is unique to the Plasma family, that is, in that it is a combi weapon, and a very rare combi weapon at that. It incorporates 2 plasma guns instead of a different weapon. What ticks me off here is that the weapon itself doesn't have the need for a backpack power source, and whilst doubling its damage, its ammo consumption remains roughly the same. That doesn't make sense from a lore perspective. Now, in terms of Dark Heresy's rules, this makes sense from its gameplay perspective. However, again, from a lore perspective, it doesn't. It does note that it roughly has the same amount of ammunition, but the standard number of shots you would get would be 10. In total, to repeat myself again. Yes, it is that low. To repeat myself again. You can increase the total amount of shots with a backpack source, but it's unclear how much bang for your buck you get. At least that I could find, that is. Next, we have the Plasma Incinerator. You might be thinking, the Primaris used that. Correct. Also, it is a present in Space Marine 2. However, it is in fact not the first Plasma Incinerator. For you see, in the Horus Heresy, 2 variants of the Incinerator exist, and they function different from regular plasma weapons. The rifle, in quote, was the plasma burner, and seems to be some kind of plasma flamethrower? It seems to be venting the excess heat and using that as its damaging source. Plasma Incinerator is the heavy weapon variant of the burner, used by the Dark Angels, Interruptor. Bloody hell, stupid name for a specialized unit, Dark Angels nonsense. Now, the similarly named Plasma Incinerator the Primaris use is just a better version of the regular plasma gun. That's a trend you will notice with the Primaris themselves. What they have is just better. How? Don't worry about it. It's also one of the plasma weapons where the Overcharge is a setting you can swap to, though I think that is referring more to game rules, again, to repeat myself. Now, here is the part of the video where I list off a bunch of weapons unique to one faction, a new faction even, the Leagues of Votann. The Plasma Axe, Knife, Blade, and Heavy Axe. And as for the ranged options, the Etikarn, Plasma Pistol, Beamer, and Gun. What differs these weapons from regular plasma guns? Well, aside from melee options just being different for the sake of being different, the Plasma Pistol, Gun, and Beamer are just better. How? No clue, they just are. It's a very frustrating reason whenever it pops up because on one hand, GW has a terrible track record of explaining damn near anything. But then when they don't explain anything, it's more frustrating because it calls into question why it is better. The eternal struggle of trying to understand. A simple reason often is not best. Yes, I am shooting myself in the foot for future foreshadowing. Aside from that, and a few things that I've removed from the previous video, which is down below in the description if you want to view history, that's all you need to know about the plasma gun? There are other larger variants and different weapons which employ plasma via some means, but otherwise, well, it's a bit simple. I wish it was simpler though.